In a quiet neighborhood in 2025, nestled between rows of identical suburban homes, a man named Daniel Monroe made a decision that would change not only his life, but the life of a little girl who had been forgotten by nearly everyone else. Daniel wasn't wealthy. He wasn't famous. He was just a single father trying to raise his son the best he could. But what made him extraordinary was what he chose to do when he saw something wrong, something deeply unfair, happening right in front of him. Daniel had moved into the neighborhood with his 10-year-old son Caleb just after a messy divorce. He worked as an HVAC technician, and between school runs, jobs, and learning how to braid hair from YouTube because Caleb's friend dared him to try, he was already juggling more than enough. He wasn't looking for anything or anyone new in his life. But life, as always, had other plans. It all started on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Daniel had the day off because of a canceled job. He had just come back from dropping Caleb off at school when he noticed a little girl across the street, scrubbing the front porch of a large brick house. She was small, no more than 8 years old, and she was clearly soaked through. Her hair was tied back messily, her tiny hands red from the cold water and harsh chemicals, her head bowed down as if trying to disappear into the work. At first, Daniel figured maybe she was just helping out. Maybe she was the granddaughter of the couple who lived there, Mr. and Mrs. Weaver, an elderly but well-off pair known for their beautiful garden and their newer model Lexus. But as Daniel watched longer, he noticed something off. There was no affection, no instructions, no supervision. The Weavers were nowhere in sight, and yet here was this small girl, scrubbing like her life depended on it. Later that day, while checking his mail, Daniel saw the Weavers pull out of their driveway. They were dressed up, smiling, and walking, hand in hand with another girl, older, around 10, dressed in new clothes, her hair styled in perfect curls. She looked like she belonged in a pageant. The Weavers beamed as they helped her into the car. But what Daniel couldn't forget was what he saw just before the car pulled away. From the side of the house, the little girl who had been scrubbing earlier peeked out, watching them with the kind of longing that hits you deep in the chest. No one called for her. No one told her goodbye. And then she slipped back behind the house like she was used to being invisible. Over the next few weeks, Daniel began to notice more. The girl, whose name he would later learn was Mia, was always cleaning. Mornings, afternoons, weekends. He never saw her with a backpack, never saw her get into a car to go to school. When he saw the other girl, Rachel, the real granddaughter, she was always dressed nicely, going to gymnastics, music lessons, or shopping trips with the Weavers. Mia, in contrast, wore worn-out sneakers and mismatched clothes that looked like they hadn't fit right in years. One Saturday morning, Daniel saw Mia taking out a trash bag almost as big as her. She struggled to lift it into the bin. As she turned to go back inside, she caught sight of Daniel watching her. She froze. She looked terrified, like just being seen was some kind of crime. That was the moment Daniel knew he couldn't ignore it anymore. He asked around the neighborhood, careful not to sound too inquisitive. From one neighbor, he learned that Rachel was indeed the Weaver's biological granddaughter. Her parents had passed away in a car crash 2 years ago, and the Weavers had taken her in. No one seemed to know anything about Mia, just that she showed up one day and had been living there ever since. Some assumed she was a distant relative or a live-in helper. No one questioned it. No one, except Daniel. One day he finally approached Mia as she was watering plants in the front yard. He crouched down and said, "Hey there. I'm Daniel. My son's name is Caleb. He's about your age. What's your name?" Mia looked up, her eyes wide. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then, softly, almost like she was afraid of being overheard, she said, "Mia." He smiled gently. "It's nice to meet you, Mia. That's a pretty name." She nodded once and turned back to the hose, her small frame stiff with anxiety. But she didn't run inside. That was something. Over the following weeks, Daniel found ways to talk to her more. He brought over cookies Caleb had helped bake. He asked her if she liked books. He learned she had never been to school, never had a birthday party. She couldn't even remember the last time someone hugged her. Eventually, Mia opened up about how she came to be there. Her mother, a cousin of Rachel's mom, had fallen on hard times and asked the Weavers to take Mia in temporarily. But when her mother disappeared completely, the Weavers never filed anything official. Mia wasn't enrolled in school. She had no documentation. To the outside world, she didn't exist. She was 8 years old, and she was scrubbing floors while Rachel got piano lessons. Daniel was furious. He contacted social services anonymously at first, but the visit didn't change much. The Weavers claimed Mia was being homeschooled, that she was family, and that they were disciplining her the old-fashioned way. Without proof of abuse or neglect, nothing more could be done. The system failed her. Again. So Daniel did something radical. He offered to take her in. It wasn't easy. The Weavers resisted. They called him meddlesome. They accused him of trying to steal their family. But when Daniel pushed for a legal inquiry, they backed down quietly as if afraid their secrets would come to light. Eventually, with the help of a family lawyer and a mountain of paperwork, Daniel was able to get temporary custody of Mia. The transition was hard. Mia didn't smile for weeks. She flinched when someone raised their voice. She apologized for everything, even when she'd done nothing wrong. Caleb, confused at first, simply shared his toys and said, "It's okay, you can have the top bunk." That was the first time Daniel saw Mia smile. Over time, something magical happened. Mia started to come alive. She learned to ride a bike. She started 3rd grade and discovered she loved science. She drew pictures and taped them to the refrigerator. She asked Daniel to teach her how to make pancakes, and he nearly cried when she called him Dad for the first time. Completely. Unprompted. There were still court hearings, therapist appointments, background checks. Daniel had to fight harder than he'd ever fought for anything. But he didn't give up. Because no child should feel like they don't belong. No child should live like a ghost in someone else's house. In late 2025, Daniel officially adopted Mia. She wore a white dress to the court hearing, holding Caleb's hand and beaming from ear to ear. When the judge asked her if she wanted Daniel to be her dad, she nodded with tears in her eyes and said, "Yes, please. He already is." The Weavers never showed up to contest the adoption. Their house eventually went up for sale. Rachel, now under the care of another relative, left the neighborhood. And in a strange twist of fate, the girl who had once been forced to watch life pass her by from a window now had a life of her own, full of love, laughter, and hope. Daniel's story went viral after a local reporter covered it in a human interest piece. People were moved by the strength of a man who stood up when no one else did, and the bravery of a little girl who kept going when everything around her told her to give up. But to Daniel, it wasn't about going viral. It wasn't about being called a hero. To him, it was simple. He saw a child being treated like she didn't matter, and he couldn't live with that. So he did what any decent human being should do. He opened his heart. He opened his home. And, by doing so, he gave Mia something she'd never had before, a future and love that didn't have to be earned.